the time that we were raising our Series A, the average value of a customer was 12 times what our customer acquisition cost was overall. We've got nearly 500,000 a month in organic traffic, and obviously that was like extremely attractive. It's very, very efficient.
What were the first steps?
Blog, like long form written content. But we also had what we call mini tools. One is a fake follower checker. It will tell you what percentage of their followers are likely to be fake. The engagement rate calculators, sort of same idea. You put in a username, it tells you the engagement rate. We also have a programmatic SEO program.
How do you come up with ideas? Like you just threw in many ideas.
Yeah, so far we've really only talked about Modash in the context of like the first 12 to 18 months.
But what would be your next steps? Now SEO is done.
Well, first, I don't think SEO is done exactly, but we've got the 80-20 of it. And you assume that 95% of our customers are not in market today, but they will be in the future. And when they are, they need to know us. Then basically this is brand marketing.
Yeah, but how do you measure branding?
That's a very good question.
Where most of your resources go between free organic and paid channels?
I don't think organic and paid necessarily. Rather, I think about it as like short-term and long-term.
Metrics, KPIs, do they actually matter?
Yeah. I think we're pretty good at not tracking things that are stupid and don't change our decisions. Yeah, that's maybe an interesting conversation, actually.
I really wanted to talk to you about Modash and your experience in Modash with marketing. Modash grows with mostly inbound sales. Many startups strive to have this sort of growth. And especially recently, you guys raised 12 million Series A. And I basically want to hear about this part of the story.
Yeah, amazing. Well, thank you very much for inviting me onto the podcast. Happy to talk about me, Modash marketing, and wherever the conversation goes. I joined Modash in Q1 2022, and around about 1 million ARR, a little bit over. I was the first marketer, and I had come from an SEO agency. So I was working in a specialist agency for B2B SaaS. I was like an outsourced head of SEO for the clients. And so I kind of came into Modash with like an SEO playbooks that I'd already been running for the clients that fit Modash into this particular category very well. For anybody that's listening that's not familiar with Modash, it's a tool for B2C influencer marketing teams, particularly e-commerce, Shopify.
You said you joined at 1 million ARR. And basically, what were the first steps that you thought, okay, we need to go this way? Or did everybody already have an idea about like where to go, what to do next? Like what was the game plan, let's say, when you joined?
I think it was obvious before I joined that SEO was a good fit for Modash at that particular point in time. And that was part of the decision to join. You know, there was a good fit between like my skill set and what the company needed. My remit was to kind of like get the marketing function off the ground, starting with kind of doing everything myself and eventually build the team, which is where we are now. But first year, maybe even 18 months, we really almost exclusively invested in SEO and content. And so all of the things that someone would search that would indicate that you're already like in market looking for this type of tool, that's what we pursued. So use cases like how to find influencers and variations of that, like how to find micro influencers, how to find TikTok influencers and so on. Other use cases like how to track influencer content. There's like competitor keywords like hype auditor alternatives, influencer alternatives, like category software keywords like influencer search tools, influencer analysis tools, influencer tracking tools. This kind of stuff is where we started. Because the big advantage of that is that someone's already, they know they've got the problem, they know they're looking for a solution. The sales cycle is typically very short. It's quite measurable and quite predictable, and has a recurring impact.
So you guys focused on SEO, and it's interesting choice because basically, if you read our previous article by the founder of Copilot to Trip, he was saying that SEO is a very long game, and it's very difficult. Like you need to compete with current existing market players. He was talking about Booking.com. That was his main competitor, but it's just interesting choice. Like, why did you decide that SEO?
Yeah, good question. I think SEO is different in every space. In a lot of B2B SaaS companies, there is generally some kind of niche that you can pursue. And I think the clearer your ICP is and the clearer your positioning is, you can usually find some section of the market which is not well served from an SEO perspective. So, for example, instead of ranking for like influencer marketing platforms in our space, you might try to rank specifically for influencer marketing platforms for Shopify or whatever. Or if you're in the CRM space, then maybe instead of trying to rank for CRM, you might try and rank like CRMs for architects or cheap CRMs, or like you would find like a subsection of the market which is not well served and is less competitive. I think generally that's the way to go. But yeah, the advantage of SEO and the reason why actually it can be a quicker channel is because of what I was saying before. The people that come from SEO, they're already looking for a solution. So if you can achieve rankings for more kind of like long tail and less competitive queries, then those people are going to convert. They're going to a lot faster than someone who's not in market.
Because I got the vibe that if the market is quite narrow, I don't know how to define narrow, but if the market is quite narrow, then SEO might not be the best.
It depends on how good the competition is at SEO as well. Because if there's like, only 100 searches a month for, let's say like, instead of scheduling software, a more specific example might be construction scheduling software, or scheduling software for healthcare, or like some kind of like vertical specific one like that. And you might find that in that particular search query, there's not many results that are actually specifically for healthcare or for construction. So if you can offer a page that is clearly better and more relevant than what currently exists, and the average value of the customer that comes from that is high enough, and to make up for the lower volume, then it can still be viable. Another kind of way that you can look for variance is by like the company size or stage. So if your category is like market research tools, the variant could be like market research tools for startups or market research tools for enterprise. And again, if you find that the results are not like super relevant to that specific long tail search, like if the results are still generic, then there's probably a gap in the search results for someone to come along and really satisfy that search for like enterprise specific or startup specific. I can give a couple more examples if it would be useful. Along the competitor keywords, like MailChimp alternatives would be an example. You could do like free MailChimp alternatives or cheap MailChimp alternatives, or MailChimp alternatives that have like some specific use case. And again, like it might not be very high in terms of demand, but anyone who does search it is going to be thrilled that they have a very specific answer that solves what they need.
I was just about to ask, is it possible that the words or the traffic might be too low?
Yeah, and then that is certainly possible, but that's a limitation of every category. There's only a finite number of searches in every category. Even for us as well, we can get a long way with search, but ultimately it is still finite. So we're not going to get to 100 million in ARR just by investing in search, because there's just not enough searches. And I think one of the topics that we're likely to come on to later is that in a lot of cases, and there's a lot of research on this, but somewhere around like 80-90% of B2B purchasing decisions, someone comes into that with like a vendor list in their head already. And in a lot of cases, someone that was already on that kind of day one shortlist is going to win. The people that you perceive to be a market leader, companies rather, that you perceive to be the market leader. So like in CRM, Salesforce, HubSpot, Microsoft Dynamics, they win the majority of the deals because, people already know them before they start research. And so a lot of purchases never even go to Google in the first place. They'll either go to people ask their friends or their colleagues, or they just remember what's in their head and go direct to those companies.
And this one is interesting. Let's discuss it later. And if we go back to Modash, basically what you did in the first, I don't know how much time, let's say what you guys did in the first year or two. One thing, you focused on SEO. Is there anything else that you started doing other than SEO?
I think, honestly, not really. Like most of the initiatives tie back to SEO in some way. So we had some initiatives, like most of what I talked about so far is like blog, like long form written content. But we also had what we call mini tools, which is where we have like a small free version that solves like one specific use case. Our highest traffic one is a fake follower checker. So you can put in an Instagram username, and it will tell you what percentage of their followers are likely to be fake. And this has like huge search volume. So again, it's a mini tool that anybody can use. It has some purpose outside of SEO, but the primary like distribution method for getting traffic to it is search again. We also did the same thing later on with engagement rate calculators. So same idea, you put in a username, it tells you the engagement rate, and then kind of like in both cases, the conversion rate optimization strategy is that we solve the need so that we can rank. We've given you the answer that you were looking for, but then we also show you there's more data available, and then you can get even more if you would start a free trial. The audience demographics, average views, like stuff like that. So yeah, like within SEO, there's multiple different initiatives. We also have a programmatic SEO program, which is effectively like part of Modash's product offering is that we let you find influencers, so you can filter in various ways. So you could say, show me all of the influencers in France that have this word in their bio and have at least 2% engagement rate, whatever. And so we built out static pages with lists of influencers from our product data to rank for things like influencers in city. So we've got like over 1,000 city pages. So if you search for like influencers in London or influencers in Paris or influencers in Madrid or whatever, we have a page for that. Same idea, and we satisfy the search results and indicate that if you were to sign up for a trial, you could then run a custom search, filter that list even further, whatever. So yeah, blog, programmatic, and mini tools, like the big SEO projects.
And which did have most of the traffic or most of the return on investment?
Yeah, good question. In terms of quality, certainly the blog is the highest. The other two, the programmatic and the mini tools, they get a higher volume of traffic and a lot of signups as well. But the thing about those is that, let me explain it. So with the fake follower checker, for example, there's thousands and thousands of signups come from that. Some of them are just like influencers that are checking their own profile. Some of them are just, people that were curious. It's, a bit gimmicky, and there's not really any intent there. Similarly with the pages, like if someone searches, fishing influencers or whatever, we have a page for that. But some of those people are going to be consumers looking for people to follow. Some of them are brands looking for influencers to hire, but it's a mix. Whereas if you search influencer search tools, like every single person wants Modash that lands on that page. So it converts really highly. It's like over 20% from visit to trial from pages like that, because the intent's so high. We have a free trial. It's very low friction. You don't need a credit card or anything like that. So it's super easy to sign up. So that means we get a really high conversion rate into trial. And that's actually one thing that we did as well. We took like probably the top 10 blog posts by traffic and turned them into YouTube videos. And that still gets recurring views and signups today as well.
About mini tool, like one thing that we were discussing before is the virality kind of. The mini tool for me falls into this virality effect that, for example, now for me in my LinkedIn feed, during New Year's, everyone was posting LinkedIn Unwrapped.
Like the rewinds.
Yeah. And it's not official LinkedIn Unwrapped. It's provided by some tool, AI tool. Many people liked it. Maybe someone started using it, but definitely it's just one-time thing. So those mini tools, are they more like virality, one-time shot to bring a lot of traffic one time?
Yeah, I guess it depends. Like the LinkedIn Rewind one is a great example of one that I guess doesn't have much of a recurring use case. Like every year, but other than that, maybe not. In our case, those projects were all built with SEO in mind. So we were following like the search volume that exists and is detectable in tools like Ahrefs, SEMrush, and so on. And so, yeah, they get recurring traffic all throughout the year. It's like relatively stable. The programmatic subfolder, like it's modash.io/find-influencers/whatever. And those URLs collectively already get like 250,000 a month in traffic and still growing. That's consistent all throughout the year. We have had like some temporary virality with it as well. We worked with a TikTok creator a while back, like 2022 and 2023, who was making small TikToks with like how many fake followers does Ronaldo have, for example, and then he'd like type the username into our mini tool and then show the answer and then say like, who should I do next? And then they'd become a series. And as part of the video, he went to Google, he typed in fake follower checker, clicked on our result in Google and then typed it in. And when that video got millions of views, other people were replicating the behavior. They were typing in fake follower checker and we got like a big spike through that. And that died off and it kind of like went back to the baseline for however many searches there are a month for fake follower checker. That is now kind of like a baseline. I'm not sure. I don't really have any other examples in my head to comment on whether or not these are typically sort of like fleeting viral things. But yeah, certainly if there's search volume that exists and a mini tool is the best way to satisfy the search volume, then certainly that's likely to be recurring.
How do you come up with ideas? Like you just threw in many ideas like those TikTokers with fake followers checker, mini tools like engagement rate calculator, how to come up with ideas for blogs, programmatic SEO, etc. Like how do you guys come up with ideas? That's one thing. And the other thing, how do you actually measure, like, should we keep doing it or not? Like, for example, you started the YouTube, but then you stopped, but now you are coming back.
Yeah, gotcha. So yeah, there's a few different things to unpack there. Regarding the decisions, obviously it's like every decision is different, comes from different places, but like the decision to create an engagement rate calculator was a really safe bet because we can see the search volume exists and we can see that competitors have already done it. So let's just do it better. That was a simple one. The TikTok one was also easy because that particular person had already done it organically a couple of times. We were like, let's reach out, let's work together and do it in a bigger way. Regarding, I think the next question was about YouTube. So the first attempt at YouTube was interesting, and so we had some success with basically YouTube SEO, like the things like how to check influencer engagement rate, as an example, how to check influencer audience demographics. Like these were the things that were generating search traffic. And we just assumed that, probably there's some search traffic on video as well. So let's create them. And those do well and they still generate signups today. But then when we tried to create more of a long-term YouTube strategy, like videos that didn't have search volume, we found that one, it was very hard. You have to spend a lot of time on it to create a great video. And then two, like the views just didn't justify it. We really needed to prioritize at that point in time. We were like, we're much better as a team at written content and we can't do everything. So let's just do written content. But at the back of my mind at the time, I was like, I have no doubts that video will work. Like there's enough examples of video marketing in the world for me to feel confident that if we did it properly, video marketing will work. It's just like, we just can't do it at the moment. And so that's why we have a dedicated senior hire that's coming in to do that. And so we're not going to try and kind of test the waters by doing it as a side project, because again, I have the confidence, like there's no way that video can't work, right? Like it's too well established as a channel. So let's do it properly from day one and kind of approach it with the long-term view that, if in the first month the views don't justify the amount of time it takes to create a video, like by month 12 it will. That's the idea. But obviously you have to be in a position to be able to do that and to be able to afford to not see the results for 12 months.
Yeah. I only second this thought. We recently launched a YouTube channel. Well, we already had a bunch of videos, so we just uploaded everything on YouTube. And that's the moment when I realized, oh, we need to up our game just a lot.
It's hard, but it's a huge opportunity as well because it's hard. Almost nobody does it. Mm-hmm. B2B, at least.
Do you think that nobody does it?
I think in B2B SaaS, there are very few people that do video marketing really well, especially on YouTube.
The thing that you mentioned about this 95 to 5 rule, could you talk about it a little bit more, and how did it apply to Modash?
Yeah. Let's talk about that because so far we've really only talked about Modash in the context of like the first 12 to 18 months, and I kind of alluded to the fact that we're doing more now, and the 95/5 rule is really relevant to that. It's kind of like a marketing principle that, to me, it feels like it's really surged in popularity recently. But I also realize that I'm in a bit of a bubble in like B2B marketing online, and that probably people outside of it aren't talking about it still. But the premise is that at any given time, probably only around 5% of your total addressable market are actually looking to buy at that given time, and that everybody else, the 95%, they're not looking to buy, and they will bring themselves in market at in their own time, based on their own needs. And there's probably nothing you can do to change that. So to give you an example, like the classic examples to demonstrate this rule, like CRM is one that we've used already today. If you buy a new CRM once every 5 years, and the like decision-making window is 90 days, then that's about 5%. So if each company comes into market once every 5 years for 90 days, that's about 5% at the time. Another example might be like business insurance. It's probably about the same. And if you've just bought a CRM, like there's nothing anybody can do to sell you a CRM like the following month. It's painful to go through the whole process of choosing one and then onboarding it, implementing it, getting the team onboarded, and so on. And so if someone offers you a CRM the next month, even at a heavy discount, like they can run as many ads as they want, they can't get you as a customer. Just not. So with that in mind, combining that with something that I said earlier, which was that when people do come in market, they come in market with a list of vendors in their head, typically, and a lot of the time, one of those vendors that they already know will win the deal. So if you pair those things together, and you assume that 95% of our customers are not in market today, but they will be in the future, and when they are, they need to know us, then basically this is brand marketing. This is what we need to do. We need to be known, liked, trusted, recalled for the right reasons, for the right use cases, so that when the day the buying purchase, like the purchasing need comes up, then we're already we have that like mental availability. It might be that they've got an annual contract with a competitor, and in 8 months' time it's going to be up and they're going to be in market. It might be that currently they don't have any tooling, but the pain is just not big enough at the moment for them to buy a tool. Or it might be that they don't have any budget for a tool, and then in 2 years' time there is a funding round, and then they do have budget and they're ready to scale. There's lots of different reasons why someone could come in market, but ultimately, like, we can't control that. That idea kind of like puts the limitations of search into perspective as well, because a lot of the time people just don't get to that point where they're searching, or if they do, they'll search and then they'll recognize brands on the search results and be more likely to check those ones out because they already know them to some extent. They know that their friend at another company uses that tool, and maybe they didn't pop into their head, but when they see the brand name, they remember, like they remember that they know something about them.
Okay. Doesn't it make SEO a bit risky investment? Because you basically rely that 10% of this 5% will go in search, or at least 5% would go in search. And
I don't think it makes it risky, but it limits how far you can get with it. That's what I meant by saying, like, it puts in perspective like the limits of SEO. And so it was working very well for us, and it still does work very well for us, but I know that it's not the thing that gets us to 100 million and to 1 billion in ARR, because we need to crack the much bigger opportunity, which is those 95% of out-of-market buyers. and that is brand marketing.
But what would be your next steps? Now SEO is done. Next.
Yeah. So, well, first, I don't think SEO is done exactly, but we've got the 80-20 of it. So a lot of our SEO work now is, some of it is maintenance. Once you've got, we've got nearly 500,000 a month in organic traffic, and obviously there's a certain amount of work that is required to maintain that and kind of defend it. But to add on top of it, rather, things that we're doing in brand marketing, and we start with like the foundations. So in brand marketing, what we want to do is we need to identify what are the like mental triggers and what are the things that a Modash needs to be associated with. The marketing fancy term for it is category entry points, but really it's like mental triggers. Like, in what situations should people remember Modash? And to give you an example that's like fresh in my head, Loom's category entry points are things like, this could have been an email. So every time someone thinks this could have been an email, they have that association with Loom. And so Loom's brand marketing strategy is to run ads that have messaging around that to build that association. So that, again, eventually, they're not designed for you to convert immediately off that ad, but for you to build and then continually refresh that association so that eventually, when you decide you want to buy a tool to solve that problem or to replace another tool, then Loom is top of mind. And so for Modash, we're still figuring out what those are. But to give you an easy example from influencer discovery, there's a typical use case that users of competitors run into, which is that there's just not enough influencers. So when you run your search, you buy a tool, it says it's got like a database of 5 million influencers, and it sounds amazing. But then you start filtering it. So first you pick a social platform, Instagram or YouTube, and then you pick a country or even a city, like let's say France, and then you put like quantitative criteria. So like, we want at least 10K average views, 2% engagement rate, and then you apply your niche, cycling, fishing, chefs, like whatever it is. There's almost nobody left. And so when you run the search, you just see the same people over and over again. And so that we want to capture like that problem and own it, so that every time someone encounters that problem, they think of Modash. And even if they're in contract for another 9 months, like we'll run the ads, we'll use that messaging in our content, it will sort of feature subliminally sometimes in LinkedIn content and so on. But the idea is that we will become associated with that problem. And so the idea is that we set out like our top 3 or top 5 of those things, and then figure out how do we deliver those messages to our ICPs consistently throughout the year. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Wow, that's actually kind of. I would say I have 2 things fighting in my head. Like I have 2 characters fighting in my head right now. One is saying, "Wow, that's genius," but the other is saying, "Yeah, this thing would work only at a certain scale." Like, does it really only work at a certain scale, or is it possible to reach it with virality? And it partly also sounds like a little bit like psychological programming, like you program person to think a certain way, kind of.
I think it's a nicer way to think of it as like brain SEO. Like when you need a tool for CRMs or whatever, the first place you search is your brain, and like whatever comes up first, like that's they're more likely to be bought. And so that requires that you firstly build the association with that problem or that whatever, and then you refresh it continually over time. But yeah, to get back to your question about whether or not it requires a certain scale, I think probably the answer is yes. I mean, I don't consider myself to be an expert in like real startups, like from zero. That's not where my career experience is. But obviously, if you're at zero, you can only do a couple of things. I mean, you could still do it, but maybe you would pick like a much narrower category entry point. You would pick like one very specific thing that's not well served in the market, and really heavily build an association with just that one specific thing. Whereas maybe a larger company with more resources would tackle more of them, and bigger ones as well, with bigger use cases. And kind of like one step above that as well, like at the product level, at the company level, like you need to pick a narrower problem in the first place, right? Like you just can't compete with Booking.com on anything. Not only branding and marketing, like you need to pick a very narrow thing that they do and really focus on doing it better across the whole company, not just in brand marketing.
No. And if we talk about brand building, what are the actual steps? Like, what do we actually do to build a brand? Like, does it mean that we buy more paid ads, or does it mean that we post more blogs? Any actionable steps?
So I think, there's maybe some like foundational steps in like I said before, identifying what you want to be associated with, and kind of like positioning, like who is your product for, what does it replace, why is it better, like those kind of like foundational things, and then from there, branding kind of touches everything you do, right? So if I post something on LinkedIn, like arguably that's brand marketing. It's organic social. It's like, sometimes it generates leads. Like it's a bit of everything, and that applies to a lot of channels. But once you have those things in mind, that will help you to, it will dictate to an extent what you do across every channel. So for example, in our YouTube content, like those kind of mental triggers that we want to reinforce, like they will be present in the YouTube content. And it's a hard question to answer because almost everything has multiple purposes. Like if we create a YouTube video on how to do an influencer gifting strategy, then that video is going to be useful for our customers. They're going to watch it and learn from it. It's probably going to get some search traffic from YouTube and /or Google. Anybody who watches it who's not in market will learn about Modash and hopefully associate us with some of those problems that are solved within the video. And so, it's maybe a little bit complicated because lots of the tactics and outputs do lots of different things. But I think it kind of starts with getting those fundamentals in place. There's lots of ways that you can build those associations and become known for those things. Obviously, paid ads is just one of them. It's a relatively easy one in terms of like time. Like you could spend money instead of time. Whereas if you're primarily going to prioritize LinkedIn organic, maybe you're a one-man band or one-woman band, whatever, then it will come more slowly, but you can still do it in with a narrower target audience, perhaps a narrower goal.
It kind of feels like the brand is the message that you want people to remember, and then different channels like SEO, paid ads, content marketing, whatever else, are just channels to communicate this message. Which is your brand.
Your brand and your positioning is kind of like the foundations, and then you have various channels throughout which you can reach your ICP with those messages in various ways.
Do you guys come up with your brand colors, your brand messages, what kind of font you use, what kind of types you use, what colors you most certainly use, what words you use, what you don't use?
Yeah, that's maybe an interesting conversation, actually. Certainly with like colors and design, it's something that we kind of ignored for a long time. We're only just starting to solve it now, and at the time of recording, we still haven't like released a new branding, new website, and so on. Simply because, especially at the time when we were very reliant on search, like people just don't really care. They land on a website, they kind of, they all look similar, and they read the content, convert, whatever. And I just didn't believe that it mattered too much. I think increasingly as we get bigger and we want to be differentiated and be remembered and invest in brand marketing and so on, then it becomes more important. But we didn't start to tackle this until like past 6 million ARR. Before that, it was like, it looks fine. It's not ugly. It's not embarrassing. Like it's okay. And that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
But again, there could be an argument for, if you were getting started, very small team, very low budget, one of the ways that you could stand out is just by having really weird, really different branding. You can be memorable. I think one of the sort of companies in the Estonian ecosystem that do that well is Klaus, if I remember rightly.
Yeah.
Probably you're familiar.
Yes. We have a post by Klaus, so go check it out.
Cool.
About the channels, so I understood that you use SEO. You use, you basically have blogs, you have mini tools, you have programmatic SEO. You think about YouTube, and you'll focus more on your brand, the messaging, the positioning. But what are other tools that you might think of using, or you thought of using but decided to kind of let's not use them right now?
Marketing channels?
Yeah, marketing channels, like anything, any paid channels, other free organic channels.
We have, I think somewhere around like end of 2023, start of 2024, we started to make a much bigger investment into LinkedIn, mostly organic. And there's a lot of different stuff probably to unpack within that. One thing is just me posting content on my personal account. I believe it has a big impact. I've grown a big network, built relationships with a lot of people that are either our customers, prospects, ICPs, and so on. Another thing is that in our blog content, we create a lot of stuff now that is not for the purpose of SEO. So it's content that is built for other distribution channels. You might call it thought leadership. It doesn't really matter what you call it, but it's designed to be helpful for our ICP, and we create it with our ICP. So if you look at our blog, generally there's an author that's like a professional writer, and there's contributors that are influencer marketing managers, like our ICPs. And generally that improves the outcome of the content. It's generally a lot more helpful because otherwise, without the contributors, the writer can only really regurgitate what already exists on the internet. And it's not very good in our particular space. So we always bring something brand new into the world with real examples from our ICPs. And a lot of the time, those contributors then share it on LinkedIn as well. And that kind of becomes a distribution channel for us. And those ICPs are obviously, if they've got a career in influencer marketing, they're connected to other influencer marketers. And that's been a really strong strategy for us. So yeah, just to summarize, the contributors make the content better, and they are a distribution channel in themselves.
Mm-hmm. And also collaborate with other people or other content creators in your area.
So that's part of the LinkedIn organic strategy. We also we did introduce LinkedIn paid ads as well. Again, some point in 2024, probably like Q2-ish. And the big advantage of LinkedIn ads is that the audience targeting for B2B is really good. So when you compare it to Google, like on Google, if someone searches influencer search tools, we know that person is in market and probably has a use case with Modash, but we don't know if they're, like, for example, if our ICP is Shopify brand, we don't know if they're on Shopify. Whereas on LinkedIn, it's the opposite. Like we can build an audience of people that work at brands that use Shopify, but we don't know whether they're in market or not. So that makes it a great fit for the kind of the brand messages, and also for retargeting as well. So now we can take that. If we have 500,000 a month in traffic coming to our website, instead of retargeting everybody, we can take only the people that have like influencer marketing job titles, for example, or only people that work at brands that are on Shopify, and then deliver them messages with product features that are maybe not obvious, like not well known. Like, so for example, within influencer discovery, we have a lookalikes tool, so you can put in a username, and we'll give you influencers that have similar audiences. Or another thing is that if you came to Modash looking for influencer discovery as your main use case, we might then put ads in front of you that says that tell you about our email tool, that is like a stickier recurring use case, or our campaigns tool, which is also more sticky, kind of like building awareness of the rest of the product set.
So it's not like you're completely ignoring the paid channels. Like you're not completely ignoring paying for, how to call them? Yeah, you're not totally ignoring the paid channels as well.
Correct. Yeah, we have a paid search investment now as well. But yeah, LinkedIn ads, it's an interesting one. I have become a big fan of them. I think the big problem with LinkedIn ads and why probably some people perceive them to be less good is because nobody clicks on them, basically. I don't know about you. I don't know if you're how active you are on LinkedIn, but can you ever remember like clicking on a LinkedIn ad in the last like month or 2 months?
I think I was more annoyed by them than...
Yeah. So like the best analogy that I've seen for LinkedIn ads is that it's like a billboard, but you can choose who drives past. You know, the audience targeting is very good and people will see the ads, but they generally don't click on them. And if you approach it with that in mind, like if you design a message where the goal is for it to be consumed, like they just need to see it and read it, they don't need to click on it for you to achieve your goal, then I think it can be a great channel.
What do you mean by like they don't click? You mean that they do not go to your website, or they don't read your post?
To. Like if my goal is to run retargeting ads, for example, to make sure that a person knows about our email tool, then that can be achieved without them clicking on that ad. But if you're trying to measure it as like a lead generation channel and you're measuring like cost per click and cost per lead based on that last touch attribution, then I think it's quite difficult, and LinkedIn ads can be quite expensive to make it work.
If you were to guesstimate more like where most of your effort or thoughts or maybe resources go, if you split between free organic and paid channels, so where most of your focus is on, or maybe ROI, or maybe what is more important for you?
Yeah, gotcha. So I think in my head, I don't think organic and paid necessarily, just because once you have a team with salaries and so on, then the organic stuff costs the same as the paid stuff, right? Because you're just paying a salary instead of an ad invoice. So rather, I think about it as like short term and long term. To what percentage of our strategy is intended to like generate results within 3 months versus within 12 to 24 months. And as I said, like first year, like pretty much 100% of it was like short to medium term, like 3 to 6 months we expect to see results. Increasingly over time, the long-term stuff has been growing. I would say at this point, we're probably like maybe like 70% long-term, 30% short-term, something like that. And there is, if anybody's interested in like the sort of marketing theory, there's a really famous book called The Long and Short of It by Field and Burnett, and they have like a ton of research, and their kind of like broad general recommendation for everybody is 60-40, 60% long-term, 40% short-term. And they make a really compelling argument that both things are required, like one won't work without the other. And so an interesting maybe application of that in B2B SaaS would be that if you're not doing brand building, if nobody knows who you are, then when they see your Google search ad, they're much less likely to click on it. And if they do click on it, then it's a lot harder for you to persuade that person to buy. The sales team has a much bigger job. The people are much more price sensitive versus if they know your brand well already. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but how do you measure branding?
That's a very good question. And it's not one that I feel like a world-class expert on exactly, but I can tell you how I'm thinking about it at the moment. And there's a few things that come to mind in no particular order. The very first one is that if you forget about like channel by channel and you just look at like the overall go-to-market performance of the company, you should be able to take like all of your costs, like all marketing, salaries, and you could do sales as well, or you could separate it, plus all ads, all software, training, everything, and then divide that by either how many new customers you get or the ARR you get, depending on what you're trying to measure, and that will give you an indication of your like go-to-market efficiency or whatever you want to call it. You'll get like a customer acquisition cost, so you can say that on average in the last 12 months it's cost us $500 to acquire a customer, and the average value is whatever so far. And so everything will show up there, including brand marketing. It's a bit of a slower number to move. You measure it like maybe quarterly or even every 6 months or every year, but it will show up there. So that's one thing. Second thing is that one thing that we're starting to measure now for the first time is share of search, because we have come across a compelling case that share of search correlates very strongly with market share. And what I mean by that is if you take like your list of top 10 competitors and find the search volume, like how many branded searches are there per month for all of those competitors, including you, and then you track it all the time, if yours is growing at a faster rate than the market in general, then that's a good sign. So that's another thing, but it has some flaws, of course. Another thing is a lot of the time in brand marketing, people say like, if it's working, you'll know. Obviously, it depends on how much you're doing and how many different channels you've got. Like if you're only doing LinkedIn organic, then obviously everything is from LinkedIn organic, and it's not even an issue to think about. The more things you're doing, the more complicated it gets. But for example, we have a tool to record our sales meetings, and so if we can set up like an AI listener for like how many times does the word LinkedIn come up in sales calls. If that number is growing, it's a sign that LinkedIn is having some impact. Same things for YouTube, same thing for like a podcast or whatever, like all of the hard to track long-term initiatives. Another important kind of like mindset shift with brand marketing, I think, is that you don't need to know the precise ROI of something in general. Like you only need to decide if you should keep doing it or not. Like you need to decide how to spend your time and how to spend your money. You don't need to know that I got precisely like a 1.75 times ROI, right? Like from writing posts on LinkedIn. It's the same thing with this podcast. Like, if someone asked you what is the ROI of your podcast, like it's a confusing question to answer. But like you believe, based on all of the context that you have, all of the signals that you have, it's worth doing for whatever reasons. You decide that you want to keep doing it, and that's kind of the same thing in brand marketing. Like there's a lot of different signals that like come in. It could be like comments on LinkedIn. It could be, like I said, sales calls. It could be branded search volume, and all of those signals kind of come together, and you can make decisions based off it. It's like a bit wishy-washy, but then, as I said, no matter what else happens, like at the top level, like the bird's eye kind of CFO view in a spreadsheet, it will tell you if your go-to-market's working or not. But an experienced marketer, I think, long before they see that number, they should be able to feel based on what's happening around, like, did that work? Did that resonate? Does anyone care about what we're doing? Does that make sense?
Is it even possible to attribute any sort of sales to organic or brand marketing?
Yeah, I think it's very difficult, but again, like there will be some situations where, for example, especially if you have like a sales-led growth, like you're speaking to people, doing demos, you will get people who tell you the user journey, or they'll tell you like, 2 years ago, I was working at this company that used your product, and so I knew about you. And then, in the meantime, they've like seen us occasionally on LinkedIn, they've read some of our blog content or whatever, and then eventually they ran a Google search, recognized the brand name, came to the landing page, took a trial, forgot about us for 5 months, and came back again, like whatever. It's a very complicated journey, but people will tell you some things about it. You can also do some degree of self-reported attribution, the classic, like, how did you hear about us, or like variations of that. And again, it's not bulletproof, because if I asked you what you had for dinner 85 days ago, you don't know the answer, probably. And so it's the same with self-reported attribution, but they might be able to give you hints, like, I I've seen you on LinkedIn, or I've listened to your podcast, something like that. And that kind of, again, it's just another one of the many dozens of signals that you can get to assess those difficult to measure channels. And then as you get more mature, there are other solutions as well, like marketing mix modeling, which I'm not an expert in, and we don't do it. But I think for most companies, most people that are listening, like these just different kind of signals that anybody can get without expensive tooling, they are generally enough to have a good gut feeling for whether or not brand marketing is working or not.
No, it's interesting, this philosophy of if it works, you would know, and also not kind of obsessing too much about the ROI number, because I know some companies, for example, here in Estonia, they obsess about ROI. Whatever we do must have
that is
ROI.
like that is also like the kind of like the marketing environment that my whole career has been in as well. I started running like Facebook ads and things in like 2015, 2016. This was like before all of the iOS 14 privacy issues and so on, and the world absolutely obsessed with like ROAS and ROI and so on, and most people still are, and obviously it's right to want to understand what is the return on a marketing investment, but I think slowly, like the market is realizing that some of the best marketing is not always perfectly measurable, and that if you live in that world where you only work based on ROAS and ROI, then generally your marketing is boring as hell. It's the same as everybody else's, and it kills like creative ideas. And you also kind of get stuck on like a hamster wheel of like short-term marketing. Like you never provide the chance to like grow into being a market leader, because that really requires like investment into brand and long-term stuff.
And how do you prove then to, I don't know, in your case, probably how do you prove it to your CEO, Avery? Or
well,
how do you...
I'm very fortunate, to be honest, in that Avery believes in everything that I just said. It's not a battle for me. So I think for some companies, certainly it would be. But I'm the most senior marketer that's like making decisions around these things, and Avery is very he gets marketing, and so we have that luxury. And obviously it's working as well. Like that's the other thing. Like, if marketing performance was tanking, if our customer acquisition cost was like through the roof, we might be sat here thinking, okay, maybe everything we're talking about is, it's all wrong. We need to really, think differently. But today, working.
Do you actually calculate customer acquisition cost? Like, do you have some spreadsheet somewhere with CAC is this?
Yes. Yeah, we do. Yeah, we have that. Yeah, as part of like the overall go-to-market measurement, like I said, and
do you
didn't have this until we hired a CFO. So we have a CFO, Nadim, who joined at like end of 2023, I think, and he really helped us to get all of that stuff in order. It was also really important for our fundraise as well. At the time that we were raising our Series A, our LTV, just not really lifetime, because obviously it's still changing over time, but like the average value of a customer was 12 times what our customer acquisition cost was overall at the time last summer. And that was like extremely attractive. It's very, very efficient. And we knew at that point that there's tons of room to make that less efficient, so that when we scale, it will go up. We knew that as the team grows, it's going to get less efficient, and certain channels like paid search is a really easy one to explain. Like generally, when you start off, like people expect that over time you make optimizations and the costs will go down in paid search, but actually it tends to be the opposite, because especially if you've got someone who knows what they're doing, they're going to be running ads in like the most effective places. You're going to be running ads in your best countries for your best keywords. In a limited budget. And then as you try and scale it up, then inevitably, like you're going to add your second best keywords and your second best countries. And, each time you scale, the efficiency is going to get worse and worse. There are some things that you can gain some optimizations, but overall, the CAC tends to go up. And the same thing is true when you add more people, more salaries. but we have lots of room for it to get worse. I think that's the good thing. One interesting comment that I have on that topic is that taking into account the 95-5 theory and all the brand marketing that we've talked about, it is normal for a brand marketing investment to take like up to 2 years to see the full value that comes back from it. Because you have to assume that out of the people that see your, if 1,000 ICPs see your brand ad now in Q1, most of them aren't in market. But, at some point over the next 2 years, most of them will come in market. And if you've built the right association and hopefully refreshed it along the way, then, you will then, have the opportunity at least. You still need to close the deal, and that depends on everything else, your trial to paid and your close rate in sales and everything, your pricing, but you will at least get the opportunity in your pipeline at some point in the next couple of years.
Moving on, what metrics are important for you in Modash, or maybe in general?
I think the high level stuff like the go-to-market efficiency and CAC, I think that this is high up. In terms of like the actual marketing team's KPIs, like we only have 2. It's Shopify signups for the platform, which is trial signups that are from brands on Shopify. So we get thousands of signups overall, but we want to cut that down to the smaller number that represents ICP signups. So that's one. We have a call bookings KPI as well, because like you said, everything's inbound. So we're responsible for filling up the sales calendars. And the third thing is that we have a separate goal for our API product, which is also based on like demo calls held. That's like a fully sales led. There's no self-serve options for the API product.
Mm-hmm. And do you actually think that those metrics, KPIs, do they actually matter?
Yeah. I think we're pretty good at not tracking things that are stupid and don't change our decisions. If a metric at any point has existed and it didn't change what we were doing in any way, it's been cut already. So everything that we talked about, from SEO to LinkedIn organic to YouTube, like all of those things ultimately contribute to the signups and the CAC target generally. Like, whether it's today or in a year's time, like the ultimate goal is always to generate the sign up and close the customer.
Because before we were talking about branding and it was more like, if it works, but also now you're saying that, yes, we actually follow some KPIs, we look at them.
Yeah, because the goal of branding is still signups. It's just it takes longer to show up, and we don't expect to be able to attribute it to a particular channel, because I understand that someone for someone to buy our product, especially on a larger plan, it's highly likely that they've known about us for a long time. Like I said, it could be that they clicked on a Google search result a year ago. They've seen 12 LinkedIn posts in the meantime. Maybe they saw us at Creator Fest, which is an event in London. And maybe they spoke to a friend who uses them. Maybe they're part of Women in Influencer Marketing, which is a community that we sponsor every month. And then eventually, like when they have the need, they bring themselves into market, we're top of mind and they buy. But they've touched basically every channel: events, social media, search, sponsorships. And so you can't attribute it to a particular channel. It's just about being wherever those people are with the right messages, build the right associations, and then when the need comes, you get the opportunity. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Basically, I'm done with channels, numbers, brand. But there's one question that I wanted to re-record, kind of. Basically, but how do you prove to management, to your team, that your marketing efforts actually work? Namely in branding, because in branding, if it works, then it. You mentioned that with it's quite easy because he's also a marketing person. Like, he understands marketing. But let's say if you were somehow in the shoes of a person who works in a company where there's no other marketing person, you need to explain it somehow to your team. How would you approach maybe it?
Specifically talking about branding, right? Like the hard to measure stuff.
Yeah, probably with paid marketing or performance marketing, it would be easy because there is some sort of attribution. But with branding, like, hey guys, we changed our brand colors. Okay, why care?
I think to an extent, it's about tracking the things that you can track, like, mentions in sales calls, comments, engagements, views, like the sort of so-called vanity metrics. I think it's taking those things and building like the narrative so that people believe that those things lead to the other metrics. So if you believe that having 10 influencer marketing managers comment on my LinkedIn at some point leads to signups, then you're going to be happy to see those comments. Does that make sense? And it's the same thing with other stuff like earlier when I said share of search, like why are we tracking the number of branded searches that we have each month? It's because we believe that correlates strongly with, share of market share, sales, like things that are more concrete revenue metrics. So I think, maybe my answer then is about like finding the things that you can measure today and the things that you can explain today, and like building the narrative around how that leads long term to the metrics that the leadership are looking for, and maybe also combine it with explaining why it's a problem to be stuck on that hamster wheel of like short term marketing all the time, like what happens if there is no long term strategy.
Yeah, in my experience, not as big experience as yours, but basically I've seen some founders who wanted to do brand marketing, but they didn't really understand exactly what it means. It seemed like they didn't understand that it is more like a long game for next year, 2, 3, I don't know how many. And basically it's kind of also about aligning together with the team, like, hey, here's what brand marketing is. You don't need to expect quick results today, tomorrow, or day after tomorrow. Here are some metrics that we can follow.
Yeah,